are creating beyond calculation, beyond politics, beyond the big two. Welcome, Silverliners, to the wondrous world of Wednesday Wham! Tonight we got a special guest. Is everybody fired up for this?
Yeah.
This is not awesome. Yes.
I can't wait to find out who it is.
I'm going to count down to him. Here. We've got our usual loyal band here. We've got Barbara, the Empress of the Inks, Kaleberg. We've got Rob Davis, often called the Paragon of Pencils. We've got the Superior Skeptic, Aaron Humphreys. We've got both Wizards of Wordplay this week. Both of them, Rory
One
Boyle.
with more facial hair than the other.
Wait, indeed. Wow. Yeah.
My goodness.
It's a different look, man. It's a different look. And last but not least, our special guest tonight, Tom Mason. Ladies and gentlemen, the founder of Malibu Comics, among other things. Ultraverse, all things cool about comics in the early 90s. And let's not forget Dinosaurs for Hire.
He was also my first boss.
Yeah, your first boss?
Yeah.
Was he a good boss, Barb? Not to put you on the spot.
Him and Chris Ulm and Dave Olbrich, they were fantastic bosses, I have to say.
Yes, they were.
That I've had a few rough patches in my career. It hasn't always been friendly to female creators, but Malibu didn't give a damn. I could have been purple and an alien species as long as I could ink well, they didn't care.
It was about talent. It was about excitement, enthusiasm, ideas, creativity, and the willingness to step out of the norms and do something more exciting. It was a time of Image breaking away from the big two, and we're going to get to the big two a little bit later. But I want to start out by asking Tom about those glory days, the salad days of independent comics taking off, and tell us just a little bit, briefly about how did Malibu Comics come to be?
See, it's like asking me to, hey Tom, could you relive the big game? What was it like when you guys scored that touchdown?
That was so cool. So first of all, it was you and Chris Ulm and Dave Olbrich, right? You guys were the three amigos.
Yeah, but there was really one amigo at the time, which was Dave.
Okay.
And so Dave and I had met. So I guess backtracking a little, I talked about this with Roland a couple of weeks ago. Is I had no desire to be in comic books. Like, it wasn't my thing where I wasn't like some people who are like, oh, I got to work for Marvel, I got to work for DC, or I've got to be, I love comics, I want to be in the industry. It never even occurred to me. I got this job. I was working at Fantagraphics Books because they needed an art director at a time when I needed a job. And I had art directing experience. So I worked for Fantagraphics. And then I met Dave Olbrich, who was hired to edit Amazing Heroes. And so we both met at Fantagraphics, and then Dave left, and he ended up getting a job at Sunrise Distribution, the comic book distributor in Southern California. And he approached Scott and said, I got an idea for this comic book company called Malibu Comics. I got all the ideas. I just need money. And Scott said, well, I've got money and I have no ideas. And so, So Dave was the guy. Dave came up with the name Malibu Comics. Dave got the business plan out of Scott and set it up. And then Dave called me, who was the only other guy that he really knew in comics who knew how to make comic books, and said, hey, I'm doing this thing. Do you want to work with me on a comic book company? And I, well, hell yes. Because I like working with Dave. Dave and I always got along. And, if there's a guy that you're going to sit around in an office with for, 8 or 10 hours a day, Dave is your guy. And so that's really the genesis of it. Is Dave just called me up and said, hey, you want to quit your job and come and work for my new job? And I was a kid. So it's like, sure,
yeah,
let's just
of course.
Right.
What's the landscape like at this time? Are we on the verge of Image, or has Image happened yet?
We're 1986.
Okay,
so
we are pre-Image. Okay,
we're way pre-Image. We're pre-Liefeld basically.
Yeah,
in terms of the industry, and we're post Turtles, and so you've got the Turtles had come out, and then everybody and their cousin who could draw some kind of funny animal with a sword was publishing a Turtles type of book. And so that I think that by June '87, when we launched the first Malibu Comics titles, the black and white industry had just collapsed.
Okay.
And so there we were. And so right as the post Turtles industry collapses, then Malibu starts up as yet another black and white publisher.
And so
Gray washes.
Gray washes.
And that's the thing too, because nobody could afford color. So everybody's trying to figure out, how to get tones. So there's gray and there's the duotone people. And that's right.
Yeah.
Yes. And there's the zipatone people. And you're trying to get, anything you can do to sort of bring some sort of depth to the line art.
Yeah. This is the first book you guys hired me for. You asked me if I could do gray washes, not inking, which is what I did. But you asked me if I could do gray washes, and I lied through my teeth and said, absolutely I can. Didn't even know what they were.
There's a great thing that all actors learn throughout their careers, that when you go on an audition and the producer asks you, can you ride a horse? You always say yes. Because by the time you get hired and by the time you have to report to the set, you have enough time to go figure out how to ride a horse.
That's exactly what I did. I got off the plane, went to the library, and checked out all the books I could on color washes. And
because there's no internet tutorial back then, and there's no Eisner chapter in his book that says, here's how I beat Jules Pfeiffer into gray toning spirit.
Yep.
Well, conceptually, Tom, talk to us a little bit about what was the intention early on, other than we want to succeed, obviously, but when you were building a stable of titles, what were you thinking? What was going through your minds at that point?
So here's the thing you got to remember is that Dave is a liar. And so
it seems to run a thread here.
So Dave pitched the idea to me. He said, this will be great. What we'll do is we will have people package comics for us, and we'll keep the staff really small. It'll just be like the 2 or 3 of us, and comic books will just come in pre-packaged, and we'll put them out. Because we had this deal. Dave had found R.A. Jones, who we knew from Amazing Heroes, and R.A. and Bush Burcham had put together Dark Wolf at another publisher, and they were used to packaging their own stuff. So Dark Wolf was going to come in like pre-done. It was going to be, penciled, inked, lettered, written. You just send it in. And there was another guy that Dave had found. It's 2 guys, Dennis Pimple and Norm Dwyer, who had done Libby Ellis. And that was all done. It was all penciled, inked, lettered, ready to go. And so for the first couple of weeks, I was like, this is fantastic. This is the easiest thing to do in comics. All you have to do is people will send you proposals for their comics that are already done. You just read the finished comic book and see if it's something you want to put on the schedule. It's a piece of cake. And then it turns out that there are not that many people in the world who can actually do that kind of thing, start to finish. And so then you realize, well, oh crap, we know a lot of people who can write comics. We know a lot of people who can draw comics, but we don't know a lot of people who can just do a whole packaging thing. And so then we went out and we started soliciting pitches from people that we knew, and we contacted the Art Institute of Pittsburgh, and we contacted the Art Institute of Chicago, and just said, if you have graduates who are looking for work, we're looking at portfolios. And then we just started acting like actual comic book people, where we started matching up writers. Writers would pitch us stuff. We'd think, oh, this might work well for this person who was drawing, and this, but this person can't ink, so we need to find an inker. Now we got to find 3 letterers. Now we got to find, somebody who can color the covers, and now we got to find a logo designer. And so you're just, before you know it, you got a whole staff.
And you had more than one line. It wasn't just Malibu Comics. You had Adventure Comics. You had Eternity.
Well, listen, I don't know how deep you want to go in the envelope, but so it started out, there was Malibu Comics, and that was the imprint that Dave and I had. That was Dave's dream. And then we found out that Scott Rosenberg, the guy who financed Malibu Comics, had financed all these other comics, like off to the side, like in secret. So he had Eternity Comics in New York, and he had Amazing Comics in West Virginia. And then because in those great, sort of post Turtles days, if you had a new number one from a new comic book company, it actually sold better than a number one from an existing comic book company because everybody smelled that new turtle money that was coming in. And so Scott then set up Eternity to start another imprint called Imperial, and then he set up Amazing Comics to start up another imprint called Wonder. So Scott had 4 companies off to the side plus Malibu Comics. Well, all those other things crashed and burned. And so we absorbed the imprint name that still had value, which was Eternity. So then the Malibu Comics name, and really, is anybody following this? I can make a flow chart if you want.
Looking for PowerPoints here.
And then, so the Eternity imprint became absorbed by Malibu Comics. And then since the Eternity name had more power with retailers, and this is where the business gets silly, books with the Eternity name sold more by a factor of 2, double, than titles with the Malibu Comics name. So we dropped the Malibu Comics name, put the Eternity name on everything. And then we were Eternity for a long time, and then the corporate name was Malibu Comics.
Well, where did Adventure Comics come in then?
Oh, now we're just really deep into the hell. Okay.
Because I did 11 issues of Planet of the Apes under Adventure.
Yeah, with Kent. And by the way, hello, other guys. I'm glad you're all here.
Hello, Roland.
What's up, y'all?
We're having a blast. Reliving the glory days, man.
So then
I lied to Tom and told him I wouldn't be here, but I decided to show up.
I know, because comics, as we know, comics is just full of liars.
Ouch!
So
wow.
Let me remove that.
But it's the hip version, so it's liars with a Z.
So there you go. That's much hipper.
That's how you know it's cool.
So now I forget the order in which these happened, because there was Adventure Comics and there was Arizona Comics, but I'm sure some smart internet person will weigh in and give me the dates. But so Adventure Comics was founded by Steve Milo, who ran American Entertainment, which is a mail order company. And Milo had this dream that he was going to publish his own comics under the Adventure label, and then he was going to push them as being super hot comics through his American Entertainment mail order company. So he basically double dipped.
Okay.
And then, but when the industry started to crash, and Milo had to actually earn a living to,
because he was a liar.
Well, once it was easy, when the money's easy and you don't have to do any work, then it's great. But when you have to start mingling with distributors and running a print ad campaign and working with the retailers and stuff like that, it becomes a lot of work. And Milo was I'm out of here. I don't want to do this anymore. And so Steve Milo knew Scott Rosenberg. Milo said, listen, I'm getting out of the business. This is too much for me. Do you want to just take over the imprint? And we're like, yeah, okay. And so because again, Adventure Comics as an imprint still had brand value. And because retailers still knew it was still on their order form, whatever. So we just took it. And we liked the idea of having Adventure Comics because we realized that Milo's inadvertent genius was he had poached the trademark from a DC Comics title, because DC had let the Adventure Comics logo lapse.
Nice.
So the trademark was still available, and it amused me no end to own a company called Adventure Comics that shared its name with a former DC title. So that was one.
So liars and plagiarists. Wow.
Right.
That's right.
No, it's not. If you're not, I think all of us who work in public domain comics can attest. If you're leaving the trademark laying around,
it's going to get scooped up.
It's fair game.
Someone's
We need one more.
get-
We're rebranding.
That's right.
Understand? Scout?
Right. We started out talking about, you were saying, well, you were not initially a comics guy. So tell us about where Dinosaurs for Hire came from, because that's sort of the signature title that you're associated with. So,
so again, what used to happen is that Dave and Chris and I would sit around the office, and we had, the 4 of us, me, Chris, Dave, Scott, we'd sit around and we tried to figure out the schedule about 6 months to 8 months in advance. And because the beauty of Scott's accounting is that he would tell you every month, this is how much money needs to come into this building in order for us to pay all the creators, pay the rent, and pay the salaries. So if you want to, basically, if you want to keep working, this is the number. And so we would sit around and we would try to figure out how many books that is that you can put on the schedule, because the direct market allows you to sort of predict plus or minus a couple of thousand what your sales are going to be. And so we're sitting around one day and we're trying to figure out, we need a book for, let's just say, July. And well, we already got a book on this. We already have books from these people. We don't have other stuff coming in yet. We can put our feelers out to our friends or whatever, but it's going to take a while for a book to just sort of show up. And so I said I had this script sitting around that I'd written for Jan Sternad's company. It was called Elvis Undercover, and it was about big fat 1970s Elvis Presley as a private detective.
Oh my God.
And
That's
so
so cool.
That sounds fantastic.
Because what we had
Are you
found
hearing
out,
this, Roland? I have an idea.
Take it now.
Just change the font.
what we found out is that there was a time during the Nixon administration where Richard Nixon had actually deputized Elvis Presley.
Yep. I remember.
Oh,
And there's
yes.
a photo online, you can find it, of Nixon shaking hands with Elvis and giving him like a sheriff's badge.
Yeah.
And
Oh, that's so good.
and my friend Mike Valerio and I and Jan Sternad thought, damn, that's really funny. What would it be? Wouldn't it be cool if Elvis took that thing seriously and just started going out on nights after his concert and just started fighting crime? And
So cool.
That's
what would
awesome.
what the hell would that look like? And so I wrote a script, and I got like
Steven
5 or
Seagal.
6. I got a full script. I got 6 or 7 pages done by Don Lomax, and it was all ready to go. There was a story written about it in the Los Angeles Times. It was good to go. And then Jan started thinking, maybe the Elvis people won't like this. maybe the Elvis people will come after me. And so he made, well, I don't mean this in a negative way, but he chickened out. And so he gave me, there, see?
The king.
The king.
Fantastic.
And so I should sue that guy. And so so I had the script, and I said to Dave, well, I got a script just sitting here. And Dave said, well, I don't want to do Elvis Undercover either, because I don't want the Elvis people coming after us. And so Dave suggested, why don't you just take out Elvis and put in something else? And I said, well, what can we put in there? And he said, I don't know, make him a dinosaur. And then sort of that light bulb goes off in my head where it's like, well, he doesn't have to be one dinosaur. I bet if he's 3 dinosaurs, that's even better. So I had like a weekend. I rewrote the script over a weekend and made Elvis Presley 3 dinosaurs.
Awesome.
With distinct personalities, where each one has sort of a little bit of like Vegas Elvis versus good Elvis versus 1950s Elvis in their DNA. And then we found a guy that we liked named Brian Carson, who was a really, really good guy. He's like a kid. I'm 17, 18, 19 years old, but like really, really good, really talented. And he really liked the dinosaur idea. So he ran with it. And then we just got the book on the schedule as quickly as possible. And then and by the way, hi everybody else. Then I was just, can you tell I've been in quarantine for like 2.5 years? So then I was stuck because I forgot, comics are like an every month business. And I didn't have a second script. So it was easy to convert one existing script into something else. It was a lot harder to realize, oh, I got to do this now. So I sat down and I tried to learn how, and then I wrote as often as I possibly could. And then I found out that it didn't matter if I was good or bad at it. I just really liked it.
No, well, the enthusiasm.
Yeah.
That connects with people and being genuine. And I think the concept is just so fantastic that just won everybody over, because in that interview that I shared with a few of us earlier, you're talking about it and it sounded like that thing was just, it was a TV show. It was this. It was that.
Yeah.
And people loved it.
But I didn't really care about any of that other stuff. I mean, it's great. I think everybody would like to see their thing turned into a TV show. Everyone would like to see their thing turned into a movie or a toy or whatever. I'm not one of those people who is like, no, it's pure comics. You can't do this with that. It's like, nah, screw that. And so I would love to do that, but I really only cared about the comic book.
Yeah.
Like I was happy to let 20th Century Fox try to ruin it and turn it into a TV show. I was happy to let the studio try to make it into a movie with rubber suits and all of that. I didn't care because my deal was I really just care about the comics.
Yes.
I never saw myself, except as a stupid person that I would parody. I never saw myself as like the big cigar smoking mogul with the fancy car and the house in the Hollywood Hills, going and having people make my comics for me while I hung out on the movie set. It's like, nah. I like sitting in my hovel, hunched over my computer, going, what's the thing that pisses me off today, and how can I turn that into a comic? That's
wait. Say that. I gotta take a note. How can I turn that into a comic that pisses other people off?
I don't know if Roland might be able to back me up on this, but when we were at Malibu Comics and we were making comic books, the worst days were when the movie people would show up and want to tour the office.
Ugh.
Because it's like, yeah, okay, you're making movies. Shut up. We're sitting here.
Go make it.
I got comic books to get out the door by 4:00 because the FedEx guy's coming, and I don't have time to walk you through the stages of how Dean Zachary draws a hand in panel 5. It's like, I don't have time to explain to you how the computer coloring works. I don't have time to explain to you the different steps that are involved in putting out a comic book. I'm actually doing it. So sit over in the corner and stare at me, but I don't have time for you. And so
or better yet, go make the movie.
Go make the movie. Yeah. What I love
bring
about
back
that,
the check. And bring
bring
back the check.
Yeah, exactly. To which they always respond to checks in the mail. But that being said, what I hear when you say it that way is, the enthusiasm was there for this industry, for the comic book itself, the creative process. You had to make the money. That goes without saying, to pay the bills, keep the lights on. But it was the enthusiasm for the content. And that brings me up to where I want to get to with the discussion, which is my problem with today's content enthusiasm is there's too much agenda, and there's too much politics, and there's too much underlying messaging without the fun that Roland and I and Barb and the others talk about all the time. Where's the fun? Where's the excitement? Where's this escapism that takes us to another place? I don't want to see anybody's political agenda played out in pantomime on the page. I want to see something that takes me far away from all of that. So that setting the stage for you there, I just teed it up.
Yeah.
Go for it. Go Marvel and DC.
Here's the thing, though. To me, and again, we can fight this out all you want, but to me, it's like saying, how come a Chevy isn't a fun car to drive? And so, it's like, why isn't this my grandfather's Oldsmobile? And so the thing is,
why are they doubling down? Why are they doubling down? I mean, don't they see that this is not? It's not what people want. Well, we're trying to show them that.
Why doesn't Budweiser taste good? I mean, the thing is, I think Roland and I talked about this several days ago. It's the worrying about what Marvel and DC are doing is sort of a waste of time, because it's the same reason about when I hear kids who want to work for Marvel and DC. That to me is like saying, well, I want to work at the assembly line at Westinghouse. Because why do you dream of that? I get that Spider-Man might be your favorite childhood superhero, or that you dreamed of working on the Hulk, or that you have this Batman story you're dying to tell. But telling me that you want to work for Marvel and DC is really you're the third guy in the factory line at Westinghouse, and the
Mhm.
washing machine comes down. You do what the supervisor says. You shoot the screws in the washing machine. It looks the same as it does in every washing machine, and then it comes out. And then you say, "Why are these washing machines so square?" And then, it's just, okay. I mean, if that's
you know what happened, Tom, is it evolved. Here's how it started for me was, kid growing up, reading the stuff, loving this character, loving that character. Boy, I'd like to draw that one day. And then it was the nostalgic love of the childhood inspiration that made you want to work for him. Then when you get older and you find out about the assembly line, then it changed. It turned into what I like to call the McFarlane Maneuver. Okay? It was get on a book that's got a high profile, sell a bunch of copies, build your fan base, and then make up your own character, go and self-publish your own book, and bring those fans with you, right? Now, those stages that I'm describing reflect the era in which those events occurred. Nowadays, you don't need that transitional move at all. You can go straight from nothing to doing the Todd McFarlane thing. But in those days, it was kind of, and correct me if I'm wrong, but that was kind of the maneuver for creators who wanted autonomy, was you had to go through the gatekeepers to get your fan base created, so then you could move that fan base to your stuff. Is that not true?
There are still guys that do that. There's still people who dabble, who come on and they'll do a 4-issue miniseries or a 6-issue miniseries or a 12-issue series for Marvel or DC, and then go back and do their creator-own book, and then come back to Marvel and DC and do something. There's still people that bounce it back and forth and still do that because it's still a good maneuver. It's still a workable thing, and it's just like like if you're an artist, it works for, let's say, Marvel or DC, and you've got a regular monthly book for however long that lasts. You're still a small businessman, so you're still doing conventions, you're still doing commissions, you're still publishing sketchbooks, you're still trying to get a Kickstarter going. You're still using your fan base, as it were, to build your career. So I don't have an issue with that. I think the Todd stuff is interesting because Todd didn't necessarily deliberately build up his career at Marvel. He didn't deliberately build up his career at Marvel to, and look at me now speaking for Todd. I'm sure he'll phone in any minute now.
Todd's going to come on and refute everything.
Of course, that's it, as he might. And so,
I just wanted my watch.
But I think Todd didn't deliberately build up his fan base at Marvel specifically to break off.
Right.
He went to Marvel and said, "I've built this fan base for you. I am, a star at this company, and I would like some star treatment that is reflected, that moves me away from the assembly line where you recognize my talent and my ability, and I would like a larger piece of the action."
Right.
And Terry Stewart has said, because I was in a room when Todd repeated this to me, said that the creators are not important, it's the characters that are important.
Yep. Ooh, that's Marvel.
And for, not just for a guy like Todd, but for a lot of people, that's kind of offensive.
Well, yeah, it is. It is, because we all know that it's a combination, and it's arguable on that popularity spectrum. You could argue that 51% is the creator and 49% is the title itself, or the other way around.
Right.
But either way, they share that responsibility for the success of the
So
title.
I think where somebody like Todd would sort of take that as a challenge, and Todd proved Terry Stewart was wrong, and then Terry Stewart got kicked out of the company. And so but I also think that in Terry's defense, God help me,
Why?
In Terry's defense, as the keeper of the corporate mentality,
yes,
Marvel is still publishing Spider-Man.
Right.
Yeah.
So Todd McFarlane is absolutely not essential to Spider-Man.
No.
Because Spider-Man still exists. And just like
Spider-Man
Steve
was
Ditko
around
was not
before-
essential, Steve Ditko is not essential to Spider. I mean, you can argue over my choice of words, but Spider-Man still exists, even though Steve Ditko is gone, John Romita is gone, Gil Kane is gone.
Sure.
A number of people have come and gone, and so I think the same with Batman.
Yeah.
And so I think the characters do. We might argue that we don't like those characters as much as we used to when Creator X was on those titles, but in a corporate view, in a larger corporate view, they just got new people for the washing machine assembly line.
Yes.
What was Terry's
Correct.
last name, Tom?
I'm sorry?
What was Terry's last name again?
Terry Stewart.
Terry Stewart, yeah.
And so
what you stated is correct in that the enduring title itself proved that the content of the title was, after all, more stronger and more enduring than whatever creator happened to be on it at the time.
Yes.
The only counter argument could be made that that the original creator still needed to be celebrated and compensated, as was done eventually.
Yeah, I think if Terry Stewart hadn't been such a hard ass,
the original creators of some of these characters getting their compensation, or at least credit.
Yes. Yeah, well, I think
so we thank him for that.
And money. I think the idea,
absolutely.
The thing about the Image guys that, well, there's several great things about what they did, but the thing that they proved is that you could take your audience away and build another island of creativity, and they would come to you. And I think if a lot of creators couldn't do that. I think we've all seen over the years where a creator left Marvel or DC and announced, their huge creator-owned book, and it's just like, okay, right, whatever. And the Image guys were the ones who really sort of figured out, there's strength in numbers. If we band together, if we make it a community, if we make it a company, if this is our stated mission, and we appeal to these, the Image guys they looked and sounded exactly like the comic book audience at the time. When Roland and I were growing up, the guys who made comic books looked like bankers. you look at photos of the DC offices from the 1960s and 1970s. It's like these guys could sell insurance or whatever. Right? These are like my dad's friends down at the lodge. These aren't the cool hip guys.
Hey, Tom, I don't know if you've ever heard me. People often ask me, what was the difference between when you were an editor at Malibu and when you were an editor at Marvel? And one of the things over the years I've said is that when I was at Malibu, if a creator came to me with the idea for a book and I was on board with it, I'm like, I like this. I could take it to you. I could take it to the head honchos and say, hey, here's this cool book. I think we ought to do it. And you guys would ask one question. The question was, can we make money? Generally speaking, if the answer was yes, then that project would move forward.
Yes.
The difference was, when Marvel took over, same scenario, same creator, same book, I would go to the head honchos. The question became, how much money can we make?
Yes.
And it sounds like a small difference, but to me, that was a huge difference. It wasn't about can we make money? It was about, how much money can we make? And that's not enough.
Right. Mm-hmm. Because we never looked at it as maximizing the profit to its greatest extent. Like, how much can we squeeze out of this? It's just like, can you make money? Because the book still had to make X amount of money over and above its cost. And there's a difference between making $100 profit or making, $1,000 profit.
Right.
And so, but the way the direct market is set up, you can almost always, in those days, you can almost always eke out $1,000 in profit over and above, because you only needed, I forget the actual number, but you only needed like 4,000 or 5,000 copies in pre-sales of a title for it to be successful.
Yeah. And
that was it. But I want to get back to something that Dean said earlier, before we forget and get off the other topic, the thing about fans and the thing about working for corporate comics versus the thing about doing it your own self is remembering the feeling that you had when you first read Spider-Man, or when you first read Batman, or you first read whatever, and you were excited. It's like, well, that's great, but being the 27th person on Batman or the 35th person on Spider-Man isn't as good as when a fan comes up to you and holds your creator-owned comic in his hands and said, I am a fan of this. So I'm not a fan of your work on Spider-Man 897. I'm a fan of your work on, on Dean Zachary #1. And that that's the feeling that I think that I wish more people would try to capture. Then because it's easy to go, oh, Spider-Man's this and Batman's that, and it's not this anymore. It's like, well, the challenge is make your thing so that there's a fan out there who can hold that in his hand and go, this is my Star Wars. This is my Spider-Man #1. This is my Spawn 7.
So
that's
enough,
brilliant. Go ahead, Aaron.
When a lot of you guys got into writing and comics, did you especially for the artists, did you guys want to draw Spider-Man? And if you read Spider-Man, did you want to draw Spider-Man? Go off and draw him, not professionally, but as a kid, go off and draw him? Or did you want to make up your own stuff?
As a kid, I learned that I loved the comic book style by looking at Romita, Gil Kane, and how they drew Spider-Man and Neil Adams drawing Batman and so on. It made me want to draw. So I tried to learn by copying. And by copying, I gained a great affection for the characters and their world. And so it was like a best friend that you grew up with. And that's really why for many, many years, and like Barbara and I discussed until a few weeks ago, we brought this up, that until relatively recently, had we been offered a short project from one of the big two, we might have taken it or would have taken it, but not now. It's because you turn a corner as a creator where you reach the perception that Tom just described, where you recognize that a fan holding your book and saying, I love this book, this is awesome, is fantastically superior to that thrill of drawing.
I never wanted to write or draw for any of the big companies, even as a kid.
Pre-Divinity.
We were such kids, Aaron. We were such kids that it wasn't even like a business thing. It really was like, I just want to draw it because it's cool. We didn't think about.
Yeah, but I mean, it was funny because I remember my friends like, I want to draw for Marvel, DC, and I'm like, screw those guys. I don't want to draw for that crap. And I just didn't. I just didn't want it. I wanted to make my own stuff.
That's good.
At the time,
I always made my own stuff. I tried. I actually remember years ago trying to draw Spider-Man. I got halfway through and I just got bored. I don't want to draw this guy.
It's the webbing, isn't it? It's the web. Drawing the web.
No, it's just I don't know. I mean, a lot of people know here. I'm not I like certain superheroes, but I'm not the biggest. It wasn't even the webbing. It was just I looked at them. It's this how many thousands of pictures of this dude? What could I possibly bring to this dude that hasn't been brought 1,000 times before?
Yeah,
there's just nothing unique, and in that context, as an artist, it's immediately just boring.
Yeah,
if I can't bring anything new, anything different, or make it my own, then I don't care. I lose interest in a lot of creator-owned, not creator-owned, but things that are drawing Batman. I'm what? Yeah. What am I gonna do? Somebody's gonna go wow, that's the ultimate Batman pitch out of billions of them. I just doesn't. I never, even as a kid, it just never made any sense to me. My friends would draw the Punisher, and I'm like, why? I'd make up some Punisher type character and draw it. So I don't know. I just never got that. It was never for me at all.
That's what
I would do characters within a universe.
Yeah.
I would do bastardizations of characters, but I would still have gone back to work for the big two until I did Divinity. And there's nothing really quite like birthing your own book to really set you, into a different mindset.
Yeah. I don't know. I just never did. Like I said, I think I read X-Men and that was it for Marvel. And
maybe it's the difference between adopting and actually birthing.
I think so. I think there was. I think there was more. More invigoration in the birthing of it. But I think I read New Warriors and I read X-Men, and then I just never read it. The only Batman story I got into was The Dark Knight Returns. I don't know. He was okay. I don't know. I like Ninja Turtles. I thought Alien Leech, Appleseed, stuff like that. But
sure,
I don't know.
It's interesting. What about we've had a silence from our Wizards of Wordplay. I'm gonna throw it to Mr. Scott Wakefield, the goateeless, the facial hairless.
Yes,
Scott
the baby
Wakefield.
faced.
I'm going to get this cut soon if you need some.
Yeah, please. I'll drape it.
It's his sympathy ponytail.
Yeah.
Talk to us, Scott. Talk to us.
Babyface Wakefield.
A little bit about what you'd like to know from our sage.
Oh,
that's
goodness.
here tonight.
So I hate to jump to. Well, first I want to comment or ask Roland, when does the Dean Zachary series start? Tom mentioned number one.
Yes,
it's been
greenlit. Number one.
It's been greenlit.
Can I work on that script, please?
I'm working on it right now.
It's just Dean Zachary fighting crime.
That's it.
Yes.
You have seen his profile pic, right?
It's just a biography, right?
He's
a
a
biography.
It's just me, at night fighting crime. It's cool.
So
anyway, go ahead.
So I hate to. I don't know if I'm. Maybe this isn't as big a question as I feel like it is, but like how do the indies break through, get above the I mean, it's a behemoth, the Marvel and DC world, Disney, and what do they need to do? I don't know, what aren't they doing? In an ideal world, what do they need to do? What does Silverline need to do? Because we're doing a million things and it's awesome, but it just seems it's just such an uphill battle. How do you change the mind? There's a lot of questions in this. I'm sorry. How do we change the mind?
Are these directed at me or are these directed at Roland?
Everybody. I don't know. Or you, Tom, because the indie world seems to ebb and flow.
I think the indie world, to me,
the whole industry, the whole comics industry ebbs and flows.
Yeah, I think and you could look at what industry doesn't. I mean, TV. How many times on television do you hear, "Oh, the sitcom is dead," or "Oh, it's all reality shows now," or "Oh, it's all crime shows now," or it's Doctor Lawyer, whatever show. And so I think and music flows too. It's like now it's all girl bands, or it's all boy bands, or it's all K-pop, or it's all whatever. And I think everything flows. Everything. I think the key is that it's all an uphill battle. Like if you were trying to make a shoe, if you came up with a design for the perfect shoe for running and you wanted to pitch it to Nike or Adidas or whatever, uphill battle. If you wanted to make a car, uphill battle. So if you have to look at it in sort of bigger terms of, it's all a battle. And most of the time, I mean, there are something like, I forget the exact number, so let's make it up. Like, let's say 100,000 people writing screenplays every year. Yeah. Maybe one gets sold.
Yeah. Silverline just needs that one big hit, and then everybody will benefit from it.
But I think that's the thing.
You win the lottery once.
But you
only have to win the lottery once.
But the thing is,
the old story is if you want to make $1 million, start with two. Start with 2 million.
Right.
So,
that's how you make money at a bakery. But I think the way to do it is to just sort of like nothing is guaranteed. The way to do it is if Roland and now Roland will talk about you as if you were not here.
If Roland all the time.
Yeah. If Roland just had one book and he kept showing up at the show, and he did all the Southern convention circuit that he normally does, and he just has the one book, eventually people would just be like, no, I've seen it.
It's that guy.
It's that guy again.
He's that guy.
Yeah. There he is again.
But over time,
man, what's his name?
At the next show, he's got 2, and at the next show after that, he's got 3. At the next show after that, he's got 4, and then he's got a superhero one. Then he's got a funny animal one. Then he's got one that appeals to young girls. Then he's got one that appeals to religious aspects, and he's got one that appeals to whatever. He's starting to look more like Barnes and Noble than one guy. And so I think that's not the key to success. That's just the key.
So I will be the ultimate skeptic, and I will slightly disagree with you.
I'm shocked.
Welcome.
And the only reason I have is most independent creators that have stuck around have made it on one book. Look at Terry Moore, Strangers in Paradise, Stan Sakai and Usagi Yojimbo, Eastman and Peter Laird and Ninja Turtles. Even when he did other stuff, that one stuck.
Right.
So I would say if you were an independent single creator, you are probably better making your own idea and focusing on that than making a cavalcade of stuff and hoping something hits. That to me is a little more shot in the dark.
I would say this then, that number one, that's not an entrepreneurial spirit. So that's a different entrepreneurial spirit than Roland has. And number two, all those titles that you named were created in the 80s.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
the world was different then. It was
Terry
Stan
Moore's created,
Sakai.
Stranger Paradise was created in the 90s.
Right. So 32 years ago.
Early 90s. Too.
And so I think
Terry sent me a copy of the very first issue that he drew of that in 1989.
There we go.
That's when he
just
created
in under the wire.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but I think 89 is when he sent me that. So it's still an 80s, and 80s kind of falls into the 90s anyway. A lot of the creative stuff that happened then.
And I think those are, and again, Roland, we'll talk about you like you're not here.
Yeah.
But I think all those books that you named are not only, decades old, which is fine, but it's a single vision guy.
Yeah.
It's Jeff Smith who could do everything. It's Terry Moore who could do everything. It's the Turtles guys who did everything as a duo who basically hung out all day. And so and the Hernandez brothers in Love and Rockets, two brothers who just, who grew up together.
But I would even argue that a lot of manga creators will spend years doing 26 volumes of a single story. And they are outselling us hugely right now.
Different
and
industry.
I would even if it's
and I would also
I would still argue that it's still
oranges is tar apples.
Yeah.
And I would also argue that if it didn't work immediately, you only know about the ones that last. Right. You don't know about the ones that had 2 or 3 episodes and then failed.
Yeah.
Right. But what I'm saying as a customer, when if I go up to a stand that has a bunch of different titles, the first thought in my head is like, a bunch of issue number 1s, and that is as far as they're ever going to get.
Right.
Because he is not focusing on one. And this is that it's like there's nothing to dig into. And I've still, as a reader, 4 issues is just not enough to dig into. Well, that is basically a short story. And some of the most.
You're not the target audience.
Right. I would say this.
Even if it's a target audience.
You're not. I would say this. You're not my customer, and I don't care if I appeal to you or not, because I'm I'm not chasing you. And so I think and so I think the beauty of it is, and again, this is and again, hi Roland. But the beauty of it is when a book, if you're, I don't look at Roland as a creator necessarily. I look at Roland as a publisher, which encompasses a lot of different subtitles underneath that includes creators. But I would say that to Roland, hi Roland, there's no when you are able to put together a book that either you've written or that somebody else has written and other people have drawn and other people have lettered, and it comes to you from the printer and you hold it in your hand, there's a feeling of real pride you helped put all that together.
Yeah, I know that. I know what you're talking about.
And so I think
he's about to do it. Look at
He's about to hold that. And so I think that's
fresh off the printer. About 2 weeks. 2 weeks off the printer.
Yeah.
Nice.
Is that from Barry?
Beautiful.
Yes.
Is that from Kablam? Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so I think so it's 2 different things. You're looking for something from Roland that Roland isn't, and Roland is looking for something that is not going to appeal to you.
So,
and I think both can live.
I'm sorry. I disagree with a lot of this stuff.
So why haven't you done 50 issues, Aaron?
I did 12.
He did 12.
12? Why haven't you done 50?
I'm not saying I could go further. What I'm saying is I see a lot of companies come out and make a lot of various different things. Mm-hmm. And every time I talk to any marketing person, they say you want to market towards your audience. Well, if you're making comics and westerns, horror, superhero, sci-fi, who's your audience? If you say comic readers, they're going to be like, not good enough. Because most of the people who are successful zero in that audience. So how do you zero in on that audience if you're doing 1,001 different things for 1,001 different audiences?
You check see which one sells.
That's right.
Yeah,
it's a market test.
And then from that, then do you bear down on that series? Then is that
and then you create something similar. You create something else that's similar.
You find out what works, and they keep going.
because you
You
look at
recycle all the old stuff and just kind of work it in.
because you look
so
at
don't have
what
to make so much new stuff.
I would say that Silverline is still in its formative stages, regardless of its age.
Yep.
And whereas somebody like Brian Pulido is not in the formative stages anymore. Brian Pulido found his audience. He found the books that work for his publishing brand, and he only makes books that fit into that brand. You're not going to find a funny animal book coming out of Brian's company. You're not going to find necessarily a superhero book coming out of Brian's imprint. You're not going to find, epic Dune-like fantasy coming out of Brian's
got the
imprint.
3 Bs of comics.
Right. And so
he's blades and blood.
Right. And the same thing with other creators like that who have their brand. I would say that Silverline is still early enough, and Roland is still figuring out, how the imprint is going to look, like what books work.
The signature books will be the ones that catch the largest audiences.
Right.
Yeah.
And then we'll mine those and then expand from there.
That's right.
But Aaron brings up a good
Because what I'm
platform
saying
for
is
a new
the two
question.
biggest successful companies right now in comics for years have been Marvel and DC. What is their brand? What do they publish? Superhero comics. Nothing else.
No, that's not true though.
That's not true.
That's their main focus. They may have
that's their main focus.
That's what
other
sells.
things, but superheroes are bread and butter.
Right.
And that's what I'm saying. That's that focus. You don't see too many straight up horror comics from Marvel. You're not going to find a lot of romance comics from Marvel. You might find some, but this is what I see. It's like I see that focus, and then I see a lot of companies come out that are independent and they do everything.
They also have $1 million wallets.
Even if they had $1 million,
like I said,
wallets,
$2
they
million
still
make $1 million.
They had to build that. They had to build that from something.
Yeah,
from another $1 million company.
But if you you know what though, Aaron, when they were starting out, they were doing exactly what Roland is doing, because
everything
they were
the wall.
chasing. They were trying to find
seeing what was going
to take off and what would stick. Like if you
Westerns
read about
what they had money.
what Stan Lee was doing in the early 60s, right before Fantastic Four and all of that, they were about to fold. It was going downhill fast. He had to come up with something, and they just threw
the superheroes,
threw it out there, and it took off. So there's a lot of experimentation in those early years, and I think there's something to be said for that. But I want to move from that for a moment to Tom's focus on this, and that is we understand fundamentally that the success of a title is the coordination of two basic things: promotion and content. So, in your opinion, I know that each part of the company has to focus on their expertise there, but when it comes down to it, is it easier to promote lesser content or to let great content do what it's going to do? In other words, can you over promote something that is dying, or can you under promote something great? And how much of each thing contributes to the success?
Well, it depends, because like for Marvel and DC, their audience is still through the direct market.
Okay. Yeah.
And so that's a different type of content versus promotion argument than, let's say, Silverline, or because Roland, do you go through Diamond? Do you have anything that goes out through Diamond?
No, not yet.
Right.
I would like to one day. Once we don't have anyone who can produce anything on a monthly basis, so we can't go to Diamond.
Challenge right now.
And so I think, so if you're looking at the smaller independents, so let's just pick on Silverline for a second. Please do. It basically where it is it's Roland, and so it's Roland's everything about Silverline is Roland's personality, and so Roland is basically the hand seller of the company. He's the figurehead person. He's the guy. It's his company. He founded it. He named it. He organizes it, everything. He's the guy you can still talk to at the convention. He's the guy you could still email to. He's the guy you could still, in theory, talk to on Twitter or whatever. And so everything about Silverline is Roland's personality. And so I think where his best, as an independent, where his best focus is hand selling. And that is, so it's the Kickstarter stuff is an extension of his personality. The books he publishes are an extension of his personality, so that when you meet the guy from Silverline at the Orlando Con or whatever, oh, that's Roland. And Roland projects that sort of good-natured, good-humored, he's not that intense guy who's trying to force the comic books on you. Oh, Roland has a very sort of folksy Andy Griffith sort of style.
Wow, that's good.
Wow. And I think that works because he doesn't run at odds with his imprint. Like when you meet Brian Pulido from his books, he looks like the guy who would publish his books. He looks like he's all dressed up like the Metallica roadie, and he's ready to go. You think if you said who publishes Lady Death, is it Brian Pulido or Roland Mann? You would know by the way they dress and the way they talk, it's Brian. And so I think that you have to be the ambassador for the imprint that you represent. You have to be on social media to the extent that you are, and you have to be able to put together a good Kickstarter program. And I think you have to build a database of people that you can reach out to that you can't talk to in one-on-one. You've got to collect names so that every time you do your Kickstarter, they're aware of it, and you just keep building.
What about Barb's point, Tom, that once we get that bona fide title that's a hit, then how much then does content begin to overtake the leading publisher personality, and it becomes the Divinity Company or the whatever? In other words, like Marvel was Spider-Man
Fantastic
for so
Four.
long, just like or Fantastic Four, and DC was Batman for so long. I mean, or Superman. At what point does it take that singular title to then rise above the banner of the publishing name? Is that what it takes, or is that an intentional thing that has to be made to happen?
I think if it's corporate comics, then it becomes intentional, because then you think, oh, I got to get that Divinity feel in all my books, because because corporate accounting, you will walk into because Roland and I when we were at Malibu Comics, we had an accountant who would walk in with the sales figures for the books, and she would say, this book sold 100,000 copies. This book sold 50,000 copies. You need to do more books that sell 100,000 copies.
Right.
And so,
right.
And so that's sort of the Marvel and DC way, where it's like, I got Divinity sold, this many copies. We got to have Divinity
more
in all our books now.
Yeah.
Right. We have to have Infinity Divinities. And so I think so. There's that, and then I think, but if you look at a more organic company that's independent like Silverline, then and Barb and Roland see, oh, Divinity is really, now it's 4 times what it used to be. Not only do you have a second series in mind, do you have a spin-off series in mind, and are you able to write and do a second series, or could we hire somebody else to do the second series? And then it becomes a conversation that goes through Barb, because it's her book. And so that's the thing. If Barb suddenly says, no, Divinity is deeply personal to me, I've only got, I can do 1 4-issue story a year because I have to recharge, that's the way you talk independently. That's not the way you talk to Marvel or DC.
Right. So let's say, why does then, Marvel and DC, for example, they make their money on superhero comics primarily, as Aaron observed, but they do keep the mid sellers and even the lower sellers. They keep them going, for whatever reason. So,
they do now.
They do now. Is it wise? Is it an organic thing, or is it an upper management decision thing to create what I call the cutoff line of it has to sell X or we kill the book? Like, is that something? How does that work?
It does have to sell X. And again, I have friends that work at DC and I have friends that work at Marvel, so I know some of this. And I obviously can't name names of people because that's where I get my stuff from. But the thing is that DC and Marvel changed their contracts for participation several years ago, which is why Vertigo is dead. And so people aren't going to, if you're creating your own character, like if Barb said she wanted to take the Divinity Project to DC, we'd have to have a talk where we just talk her off the ledge and say, don't
do
that.
Don't do it.
You know,
They'll destroy it.
Right. No, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if they'll destroy it. It's just you'll lose it. It'll be gone.
Yeah.
It won't be yours.
Yeah.
And so people, the reason why you get 17 versions of Metamorpho over a 17-year period is that DC doesn't create DC doesn't create new things much because they don't reward the creator. There's no reward for creating a new Batman villain. There's no reward for creating a new superhero character for Marvel or DC that is equal to what you can do for Image or for some other independent company.
Right.
Is it fair to say for the up and coming creator in their early 20s and they're listening and they're watching this broadcast and they really want to get in the business, is it fair to say you're crazy? No. Is it fair to say
yes, it is.
Change majors.
Change your major. Do something real. No. Is it fair to say that what they need to do, first of all, is stick to what you love to do and keep honing your skill set, but don't necessarily try to tailor your content to a certain demographic. Do what you love and the demographic will find you. Is that too idealistic, or is that something
because I think because you're talking to a kid in there who's 20, 21, 22 years old, and how's that going to work? That's
right.
that is you can't. I think we've all been that kid who's 20, 21, 20, 22, and you couldn't tell me a goddamn thing. And so
there's that.
So I think that's the lesson of the wizened veteran telling the younger people how to do it is even if it's valid, and I don't even think we should argue about the validity of it. The message won't get heard, and so I think any kid who safely dreams of drawing Spider-Man for a living is foolish, because that's like saying I want to write a movie that only Spielberg directs. It's like
wow.
Okay. No, it's fine, but
it's a good dream to have. Write the best script you can.
Happen,
right.
Also, so what you're saying is dream beyond peripheral success. Dream your own success, not success attached to someone else's success. But much like Aaron did as a kid, like, I don't want to do these other people's stuff. I want to do my own stuff.
Yes.
If many of us, didn't have that approach as younger people, because we did want to be associated with the cool character that we loved, right? But the better advice, which they won't listen to, of course, but the better advice is do your own thing, keep doing it, do it well.
Right, but there's a thing in the younger days, in the days when Roland and I were bratty kids, you only had Marvel and DC.
Right.
That was it.
Right.
And so if you wanted to work in comics, there's no making your own comics. Right. There's no internet where you can post stuff. There's no Instagram. There's no TikTok. There's no none of that. You just you tell your parents, I want to work in comics. I'm going to draw Spider-Man. Or I'm going to draw Batman, or I'm going to write Superman, whatever. That's it. Those are your options. Today, there's so many other alternatives that you can pursue, including starting your own company or publishing your own single vision comic book or doing something for the internet or whatever, that you're foolish to sort of say, I only want to draw Spider-Man. Yeah. I want some guy at Marvel or DC to call me up and say, hey, I got screwed on my Batman deadline. I need a book in 14 days. Can you save my ass and be my guy? And I think, that's kind of a crappy vision. And so I think,
I used to have that vision.
Yeah. Right, a lot of people do, and then you think, well, this, and how many times do you save an editor's butt, and then you don't get a reward? Like, it doesn't lead to the call goes out. Hey, we're hiring for this new book. Rob has saved my butt on 17 issues of this late title. Maybe I should give it to him. It's like,
nope, no, not anymore. Not anymore.
And
it used to be a little bit more like that.
Right.
It was more like that. Yeah.
But the industry, I know this for a fact. You're not going to get into DC unless you are successful somewhere else.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so
Yes.
if you've got to have, if you want DC to notice you, you can send samples to DC all you want to. You can email the editors, you can talk to them at conventions or whatever. But until you stake out a claim within the industry of a thing that you've done that has attracted attention, DC is not going to be interested in you. It's why people who get on TV now have like a million TikTok followers. They get on TV because they bring an audience.
Yeah.
And so you gotta do that.
Yeah. And why work for DC when you can work for Silverline? I mean, come
That's
on.
right.
Well,
You don't work for them. You don't work for us. By the way, I want to welcome Brent Larson to our
Brent.
crew
Love
tonight.
the shirt.
Hey,
Glad you
Brent.
made it.
Amazing shirts.
Glad you
You're
made
like
it.
a
Yeah,
model.
good.
hey, Brent, we've been talking about you.
Yeah.
I was on my ship, and I had to come to. Yeah.
Just back in port.
Just back in port.
Oh, Brent, you're in the Coast Guard, eh?
So Marty.
Yeah, I stopped short of getting the military discount. But,
I hear you. So, Tom, tell
Yes.
us. You've made it clear, and I'm glad you're being as open and forthright and blunt as you can for these kids who are listening. Like, it's foolish to want to do that. Do your own thing. Not that they'll listen, as you said, but
again,
that is wise advice.
Kids.
Well, there's nothing if it's again. I'm not the angry old man who's going to criticize kids if they want to
Get off my lawn.
But I mean, if they have a dream where they want to work for Marvel and DC, that's fine. It's that's a let them
Somebody
try.
needs
Let them
to
do
work
that.
for him.
Right, but the Robert Rodriguez didn't become a Star Wars director on his own. He started by making his own movies, and especially his low budget movies that he financed with his credit cards in Texas or whatever.
Yeah, Desperado.
He made that for like $7,000, and then
Right.
25 years later, he's directing Star Wars stuff. So it's like he doesn't become the Star Wars guy until he makes his own small movie that attracted
his
attention,
first
that
small
won
movie,
awards.
El Mariachi, not Desperado.
That's right, El Mariachi.
It was
That's-
called El
that's-
Mariachi.
Yes,
Very good.
very good.
Very good. It
And-
became
Yeah,
Desperado.
he got to remake it with a bigger budget, but yeah, it was El Mariachi. And so that's the thing. A lot of people, if you look back at successful movie makers who are directors or writer directors, somewhere along the way, they made a really tiny movie that was very independent. And El Mariachi does not look like his Star Wars stuff, but he doesn't get to do Star Wars. He doesn't get to have a career until he makes his own
Without
movie.
that. Without that.
I'm
Now,
confused. When did Robert Rodriguez direct Star Wars?
he directed an episode of Mandalorian, I believe.
And Boba Fett.
And Boba Fett.
Yeah, he did several episodes of The Mandalorian and several episodes of the Book of Boba Fett.
he's
So
in the
he's now
mix.
in the Star Wars team, so to speak.
Right.
Family.
So,
Yeah.
the
That's-
family. Indeed.
That's actually kind of depressing, really.
They're the guys who are going to turn it around, dude. Come on.
I'd rather he just make his own stuff.
But that's
What
the
about-
thing. He takes because he has a studio. He has a studio in wherever it is in Texas where he does make his own stuff. So he bounces around the way a lot of these people do. That he bounces around from I'll do some Star Wars stuff where I'll get known, I'll make money, I'll meet. The key to making movies is you've got to find people who have money because movies.
That's the key to everything.
Right. And so, by being a Star Wars director, he has access to money that he didn't have when he was just a small San Antonio filmmaker.
Right.
Tom, you mentioned earlier, I guess the corporate approach of emulation, right? The suits want you to emulate what's successful, do a version of that. Talk to us a little bit about emulation versus originality in terms of, do you go against it or do you go with it or do you try to walk that line and blend the two?
Well, I think the worst thing maybe this will make Roland laugh, but because we used to hear this all the time when as Malibu Comics became more corporate is, we got to do X because we had a boss, Bob Jacob, who was always like trying to follow the hot thing. We got to do the hot thing, and so you would just sort of we would do it as a defense mechanism, and it's like, oh yeah, sure, Bob, yeah, we'll do that. We'll get right on that. And so, but the thing is, you tell where you don't want to get. And again, this is just corporate office politics. You don't get into the no and stand your ground and have a huge fight in the conference room about the thing, because that's like talking to kids. That's not
going to work. It's not going to help anybody.
So you just say, yes, you're exactly right, sir. We'll get on that right away. And then either A, you forget about it, or you sit around like we would do. You would sit around and say, this is the thing Bob wants us to do. And then we would figure out, how can we fix it? We know what he's trying to do. He just wants a book that sells. How can we twist that around so it looks like we're giving him something that makes him happy, but we're also doing something that makes us happy?
Yeah. I used to work for an ad agency, and we did one for us, one for the client, and one that was a blend of both.
Right.
We could sell, right? Because the client's idea was always bad.
Yes, exactly. And so that's the way it is with the corporate boss too. The corporate boss doesn't care about anything.
When they know what they want. Most of the time, they don't even know what they want.
They don't know what they want,
but they don't.
No, they don't. They don't.
They know what they don't want.
Yeah, that's right.
It's the same thing when I work on television stuff and I get notes from a producer, and it isn't so much the note that you get, change this dialogue or give this character a dog or, make this person whatever. And so it's not so much that. You have to sort of figure out what they really want, what they really mean, and how you can address it in a way that makes everybody happy. That's the lift.
Yes. I would be remiss if I didn't give my friend Rory a chance to ask a question. You've been silent over there in the corner, my friend.
So rare. This is the quietest night.
He has a Gandalf beard that he's been stroking.
Yes, I have so many questions.
Dean, if you open this door, he's going to just run right through.
I know. I was waiting till the very end here. It's like, okay, go for it, Rory.
Every time I stroke my beard is a different question. So I don't even know where to begin.
All right, can I make some coffee? Are we
start over from the top. Actually, I had two questions, and over the course of the night, they kind of got smashed together, which is awesome because they are related. But like you said, we were talking about the turtle stuff,
right?
The genres come in like groups, like everybody jumps on one bandwagon at a time. All the turtle stuff, all the animal stuff. I think of like Conan and Beastmaster. Think of Blade stuff and all the vampire stuff. It's like zombies all together. It's like everybody jumps on one thing at a time. I think we have to look ahead to see what's going to pop again. Is there going to be the nostalgia buy every 25 to 30 years? Or like what's the pattern we should expect of what will be in vogue in the next 5 to 10 years? And start working on it now.
Well, I think that's the pathway to madness, because you're trying to guess. Yeah, because it's better. It's like Barb. Where did divinity come from?
A dream. My brother's sickness.
Okay.
My brother's cancer.
Right. Okay. Well, I'm sorry about that. I was hoping for something a little lighter.
No.
It's a heavy thing, man. You should.
Hey, man, it's now. I got nothing now.
All the doors are flying open.
That's it, man. It's like, whoa.
But that's. Well, now I got nothing.
Okay. So it's all right, man.
There's sadness.
We're holding it together up till now.
But you can't say, oh, well, I think that's going to be the next hot thing, and so I think
it's
what you can
everybody
say
can relate to.
Right. What you can say is that zombies are sort of played out until they're not, and then because I would have said zombies were all played out until Kirkman's Walking Dead book came out.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And now they're really played out, or maybe they're not,
right,
because you just need that one thing. Maybe funny animals are tired until they're not.
So it's generational.
And the interesting thing about this, I actually have some insight into how Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles became the thing that it did, and it was because it was released at a tiny little convention out on the East Coast on a slow news day, and it got picked up by a local TV station, did a story on it, and because it was a slow news day, it went nationwide. It went viral.
Right time,
So a
right
lot
place.
of it is pure
luck.
Yeah.
It's absolutely luck.
And what
what I say about luck is when preparation meets opportunity. So create something you really believe in, and hope for that opportunity to make it into something bigger. It might come tomorrow. It might never come, but you at least have some fun while you're trying to get it done.
What's the adage? Once you notice a trend, it's too late, right?
Yeah.
Once the adults start using the slang, it's done. Right? Am I wrong?
Facebook was doomed 10 years ago. Got it.
That was a fat thought.
I always say you can
heavy.
You can tell that kale is over because Lay's makes it a potato chip.
Right.
So that's
I'm never gonna get healthy. I heard eggs are good for you again, so that's
right.
So really, calculation is not the way to go in your mind, Tom, right? Because calculation is just chasing something that's,
because this is where I'm going to go, and now I'm going to go agree with Aaron, is that the guys that he's talking about who made their own book, so the Terry Moores and the Jeff Smiths and the Turtles guys, they weren't calculated.
Right.
The Love and Rockets brothers, they weren't calculated. This is the thing they wanted to do more than anything else in the world. This is the idea that they had. This is what they wanted. And
and it
nobody was clamoring for, that funny looking bone book. Nobody was clamoring for turtles with samurai swords. Nobody was clamoring for any of that. There wasn't a trend that preceded it. That was just the thing they wanted to do, that they felt strongly about and that they could create. And so I think that's and we talked about it before. The industry is littered with the bodies of 1 million of those kinds of things that didn't succeed.
Yeah.
But that's it's also littered. It's also littered with the bodies of 1 million books where people tried to be calculating.
Yeah. So you don't think it would behoove us to fill the negative space of a culture of like, what aren't people getting? Some kind of like positivity, because everything seems to be like really down and out now. Wasn't that when Superman came on the scene?
Yeah, but what are you at that point? Are you being a creative person, or are you being a publisher? Like if Roland thinks that Roland should be paid to think that way because he's the publisher, and he should be thinking about what kind of book would I want to do that I think might work, and that's where his conversations are. But if you're a creative person and you're creating a thing, I think the worst thing you can do is make a menu of things that are popular and go, well, I'm going to try to work these things out.
Well, I was going to popular. I was going to the opposite.
I would say, Rory, too. I used to. So my college degree is in fine arts, and then I also went to the Art Institute for a while. Doing those two things, I came to a conclusion, and this is going to maybe sound mean, but it's something that I came upon.
I love mean. Do you mean
to all of you here?
Make them cry.
Be mean.
When I talk to people, they was like, "What's the difference between fine arts and commercial art?" I'm like, easy. Fine arts is the art with all the ideas. Commercial art is the art with no ideas. And what I mean by that is I saw so many people reiterate the same stuff they've seen over and over and over and over again, to the point it just becomes nauseating. Like when I went to the fine arts, like the stuff I saw, even though it wouldn't even maybe work in comics, you're seeing people who are thinking so far outside the box that it really got my mind wandering. Like, man, if I could take some of the creative juices in the fine arts building and shove them into the commercial art, like comics, we could possibly transform the industry, because they would see things so differently. You come in the comics and I see people like, hey, I drew a Dragon Ball Z character, just like Dragon Ball Z. And like, yeah, thank you. That's great. Or people in the art institute, like everyone want to get into Pixar. So everyone drew Pixar characters, and they just buckle. It was like, so the actual change in ideas was so small. And it was just, and like me and my friend Tom have talked many times. I mean, you sit down with a blank piece of paper. Your imagination is the limit. You can do anything you want. So I'm going to draw a variation on Spider-Man. Or I'm going to draw another green alien. And I'm like, seriously, dude? You can do anything you want. Stretch it. This is called, to me, this is what's called bravery in the industry. And this is something that I will say in the comic industry, there's not a lot of bravery sometimes. There's a lot of safety.
Yeah.
We're going to do what came before. We're going to try to catch what's hot because we don't want to lose money. And then you see those brave guys try something, and if it hits, boom, they're gone. There's not a lot of bravery. And to me, my personal opinion, it frustrates me to no end. Because the lowest entry for any creative medium is comics. Dude, you can do these entire things in one room in your house with minimal money and budget. It costs more to make a commercial and a movie than make comics. And yet when people still make comics, the creator is like, I can't do that creative idea. It's not going to make money. Who cares? Do it anyways. It is so easy. The entry level is so easy. Do it. I've seen comics done in fine arts, watercolor at the library. I've seen comics taught. I mean, one lady wrote about a history growing up in Poland during the communist fall. I've seen books about the history of Israel. I mean, I've seen books with so many ideas and ways to present it. It's just amazing. But American comics are stuck. If it doesn't have a cape, we don't care. And it's really, really frustrating because I want to be part of the European comic scene or the Japanese. The people who, even though they have their tropes, are different. They're pushing those boundaries, pushing those limits. Especially if everyone tells me there's no money to be made in comics. Then even better, if there's no money to be made in comics, then what is stopping you? What is stopping you? I don't know. This is literally, it just absolutely baffles my mind that I literally worked for a guy. He's like, hey, I have an idea for a little green alien. I'm like, really? A little green man? It's a cliche. Come on.
Yeah.
We can do better. And every time I pushed him, he was like, no, I just want to make a Star Wars.
You just got to make something
and you
15%
can do that
better.
if you can find a new twist for it. You find something
right.
that's different
15% better
to do with it. Yeah.
What it comes down to, Aaron, and I hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
I understand what you're saying. The fine artist and all of us who are creators wants to scream out, do something really cool and different, and everybody has to find their zone. Your zone may be farther on the edge than other people's zones, and everybody's zone is valid. That's the thing. Everybody's zone is valid. But dude, if you feel it that strong, do it. Just do the crazy. Yeah. Go for it.
Well,
I actually looked up My Godliness comic to see if anybody's ever written anything like this, and as far as I know, no.
Exactly.
Even my kid's book is about an alien wildlife photographer. I looked that up. Has anyone done that? No one has ever thought of that.
See, that's awesome. Dude,
no one's ever thought of that. In fact, that people go on the originality. I'm like, really? If my thing is original, that's a sad commentary on the kids' book medium.
You're in the right place, though, Aaron. You're in the right place because here we are, and it's wide open. There's no, as far as I know, Roland right there. Hi, Roland. Yeah. Roland's not going to look over your shoulder and go,
"Oh, he's back."
You've got to do the corporate style. You've got to do this. And
no, he's not. And that's why I like Silverline.
Just,
but it's just frustrating to see like another Kickstarter. It's like, hey, I have another superhero story. I'm like,
that's okay, man. Hey,
you know what? Thing is, I don't.
We love all our brethren, man.
Oh yeah,
that's what they want to do. Let them, that's what they want to do.
That's a good point, because when Scott and I we went on that Founders of the Day podcast YouTube channel when we were pushing Steam Patriots for the Kickstarter and Divinity, and the guy who ran it was like, you know what? Years ago, I had an idea for a steampunk American Revolution, but I said, nah, that'll never sell. And then we did pretty good numbers.
Yeah, we all right.
But the thing is that I don't really care if other people do superhero books. If their vision is just another, oh look, he's got the powers of an owl. It doesn't. It's not something that interests me, but it doesn't make me upset or angry. That's the way they perceive it, and that's what they want to do. And so the fact that they can do it and they have the opportunity to do it, or they create the opportunity to do it, it's all good. It just doesn't. Yeah. It doesn't necessarily interest me to see yet another superhero book. I'd rather see something different, but
yeah, to each his own, I guess.
To each his own,
saying, right?
Yeah.
To each his own.
Because if you want something different bad enough, you make it yourself.
Yes, right. Exactly.
That's kind of what Aaron does too, though. I mean,
exactly.
He's our resident challenger.
For once, I really agree with Aaron.
Yeah. Oh man,
it's a sign of the apocalypse. No.
Yeah, I know. Right?
Because the thing is, I think if you look at the silver line message, at least as I see it as an outsider, it's that Roland doesn't see these books at another company, and so he made his own.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the reflection of Roland. If I don't like what's going on in the superhero comic book industry, I have opportunities to do something completely different, create my own company, hire my own friends.
I just wish
my own
they'd
stuff.
overshadow so many other things. This is
One
why
of our-
Disney always annoys me, because it overshadows so many other things.
you
One
have
of
our
these
taglines.
strangleholds. So yeah,
Our description is a multi-genre spanning company.
Genre spanning.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah. Whatever.
Because if you
I like
close.
genre span.
That's
I
close.
like that.
Genre
Dean,
span.
You were.
Dean, I've got a question for Tom. If you have time to let me.
Please
ask it.
do. Please.
Okay.
Yes. Yes.
All right, Tom. I'm gonna put you on the spot here. So,
please go ahead.
And I know that you
Bring it.
you're not intimately familiar with everything, but if you were from the Tom Mason perspective, looking in at Silverline, what do you think? There are two questions. What do you think is the thing that we're doing right, okay. Or on the path to rightness? And what is the thing you think we're doing wrong? Maybe not doing wrong. What do you think the thing is that we should work
Needs
on?
improvement.
This needs improvement. What are we doing right? What needs improvement?
So there's I never look at a publisher and say, oh, they're wrong, except for when somebody comes out and says we've got financing and we're going to start a new superhero universe, because that is, I think, a dead end. And so so I say, where you want to hear the right part first, or you want to hear the better part first?
Let's do the right part, because you'll probably be shorter on that.
Okay. But I think the right part is that Silverline is a reflection of Roland. And so I talked about this, like, it seems like 3 days ago. But it's when you meet Roland, when you meet you and you shake your hand and you see you at a convention or whatever, your books reflect that personality. And so I think you, as the spokesman, like if you suddenly hire a person to be your convention person and nobody ever sees you again, that's detrimental to your brand. You are the brand. And so you owe it to the business, and you owe it to the creators who sign with you to front the company, go to the conventions, go on the podcast, be that folksy Andy Griffith guy that people relate to. I'm not saying that in a negative way. I don't know.
What does that make Barney?
You've got to be, because you're not, whenever I talk to you, you're not a corporate guy.
Right.
You're not a hardcore suit and tie, person like that. And so I think that's to your benefit. And I think the thing that you do is that you have your plan is a slow rollout. Every book has to make money. Every book has to fit the thing that you want to publish. And because I think what you can say about the Silverline books is these are the books that Roland likes. These are the things that he wants to publish. And so I don't see you publishing a book that you don't like.
No.
That wouldn't be Roland.
Nope.
So there. That's the good part.
Okay.
What's the bad part?
Lay it on thick.
Yeah. The bad part is I just think you need to have a way to expand your media presence.
Yeah.
And I think, and I don't know, we can talk about this offline if you want at some point, but you got to get your books in front of movie and TV producers. You got to get some kind of national, and I say these things like they're easy, but of course, I'm not.
Just do it, Roland.
Yeah, just do it.
Just make a musical.
What's wrong with you, son?
Come on, man. Come on.
Get off your lazy
It's only
Silverline
9. What time is it on the West
All you need are
Coast?
4 chords.
No, but I think
Get Hollywood on the horn.
you want to get into the part of that conversation where every time a book comes out, you've got like 30 places in LA to send it to. And every time you've got a list of national reporters who write about comics for the New York Times, the Washington Post, and the Texas Tribune and whatever, where maybe they never write about it, but you stay on their radar.
Right.
And that's the thing that always helped Malibu, that always helps everybody else, where you have to get Hyper Potato thinks you're calling you a dirty hippie, which I think is as far from what I've called you as
Yeah.
So,
Oh my!
and so I think where you've got to, as your company matures and as you get more known, those things will happen. But you want to pay attention to that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Well,
Cool.
I speak for everyone when I say I want to thank Tom for spending time with us tonight, and your tremendous insight is very helpful. No, I'm being serious. I'm not just blowing smoke, man, because you did this whole thing, and we're in the process of doing this.
You want an internship
I really do
at,
thank you.
You want an internship?
Internship.
Actually, I did one for my degree, so.
But thanks again for being with us tonight. And,
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, and hopefully you'll come back and discuss discuss more.
Well, Roland just has to lie to me and tell me it's it's only going to be
the hell out of something.
It's only going to be a couple.
Well,
that's right.
Since I
we're
seem
all
to be
liars and plagiarists, so that's what we do. But we always like to close our broadcast by saying, "Make mine
Oh, look at you guys! Very cool.
I'll give you.
Hey, I'm Alex Saviuk, and I just want to let you know, make mine Civilline.